You're laser focused on winning your next trade, and that's precisely why you're still losing money. You think that one perfect setup, that one massive win, will be the turning point. But you've actually fallen into a trap, a psychological prison that keeps 90% of traders from ever seeing real, consistent profits. The late, great trading coach Mark Douglas had a secret for us. He said that consistent profits have almost nothing to do with winning the next trade and everything to do with the one after that, and the 19 that come after that. Let's be honest, this story is going to sound familiar. Whether you're a beginner or a 5-year veteran who's still just breaking even, you know this feeling. You spot a setup that looks absolutely perfect. It ticks every single box in your strategy. You take the trade, your heart pounds as it rips in your favor, and you cash out for a fantastic profit. That euphoria? It's a drug. You feel like you finally cracked the code. You feel invincible. So, what happens next? On the very next trade, you bend the rules. Just a little. You jump in early because you're terrified of missing out. Or maybe you double down, convinced lightning is about to strike twice. But it doesn't. The market snaps back, you get stopped out, and in one impulsive move, you've given back all your profits and then some. You're left staring at the screen, stewing in frustration and confusion, asking yourself, what the hell went wrong? The strategy works. And you're right, the strategy might be perfectly fine. The problem is you're caught in the single trade trap. This is the toxic belief that the outcome of your current trade is all that matters. It's that desperate, gut-wrenching need to be right now. This focus locks you in a vicious emotional cycle. A big win leads to overconfidence and reckless decisions. A loss leads to fear, hesitation, or even worse, revenge trading. This cycle is the real enemy, not your indicators or your entry signals. You're playing a game of psychological roulette, and the house always wins. This single trade mindset puts you in an unwinnable war with the market. Every tick that goes against you feels like a personal insult. Every loss feels like a direct hit to your intelligence. So you spend your days and nights hunting for the Holy Grail, a perfect strategy, one that never loses, because the pain of a single loss is just too much to handle. But that strategy doesn't exist. The cost of this war, both financially and emotionally, is staggering. You blow up accounts, not because your system is broken, but because you ditch it the second it has a normal, statistically guaranteed string of losses. You live in a constant state of anxiety, glued to your charts, your mood swinging violently with every tick of your P&L. This isn't a business, you're a gambler, pulling a slot machine lever and praying the next spin is the jackpot. And here's the paradox, the more you crave certainty on the next trade, the more emotionally you behave, and the more random your results become. You believe knowing what happens next is the key to making money. But as Mark Douglas taught, this belief is the very source of your failure. The market doesn't care about your predictions, and trying to be a fortune teller will only drain your account and your soul. But what if there was another way? What if you could trade without fear, without hesitation, without all the emotional baggage? Mark Douglas, through his revolutionary work in trading psychology, gave us the map out of this prison. He taught that professional traders don't even try to predict the outcome of a single trade. They've made a profound mental shift. They've learned to think in probabilities. And this is the core idea that changes everything. True consistency isn't about one win, it's about the predictable outcome of your next 20 trades. This is where you stop being the gambler and start acting like the casino. A casino has no idea if the next hand of blackjack will be a win or a loss. It can't predict a single spin of the roulette wheel. And it doesn't care. The casino owners know that over thousands of hands and thousands of spins, their small statistical edge guarantees they will make a profit. They've embraced the cold, hard reality of their business. Individual events are random and uncertain, but the results over a large sample size are predictable. This is the professional trader's mindset. To start thinking like a casino, you first have to accept what Mark Douglas called the 5 fundamental truths of trading. These aren't just opinions, they're the unchangeable laws of the market. First, Anything can happen. It doesn't matter how perfect your analysis is or how sure you feel, the market can do something totally unexpected. A guaranteed trade does not exist. Second, you don't need to know what will happen next to make money. Profit comes from an edge playing out over time, not from a crystal ball. Third, there is a random distribution between wins and losses for any given strategy. This is the one that trips everyone up. Even a strategy with a 60% win rate can have a string of 4, 5, or even 6 losses in a row. In the short term, the sequence is completely random. Fourth, an edge is just an indication of a higher probability of one thing happening over another. Your strategy doesn't promise you a win on this trade, it just tilts the odds in your favor over many trades. Lastly, every moment in the market is unique. Just because a setup worked perfectly last time doesn't mean it will work the same way this time. Every trade is a totally independent event. Internalizing these truths, especially the random distribution of wins and losses, is your first step to emotional freedom. It allows you to see losses for what they really are, a normal, unavoidable cost of doing business, not a personal failure. Once you accept the 5 truths, you need a practical way to put them into action. This is where Douglas's 7 principles of consistency come in. Think of these as the non-negotiable rules of engagement for trading with a probabilistic mindset. First, I objectively identify my edges. You have to know exactly what your setup looks like, with zero ambiguity. Second, I predefine the risk of every trade. Before you even think about clicking the mouse, you know exactly where you're wrong and how much you stand to lose. Third, I completely accept the risk. This means you're genuinely okay with taking a loss. If you're not, you have no business being in the trade. Fourth, I act on my edges without reservation or hesitation. When your setup appears, you execute. No second guessing. No fear held over from the last trade. Fifth, I pay myself as the market makes money available to me. Have a plan for taking profits so greed doesn't turn a winner into a loser. 6. I continually monitor my susceptibility for making errors. This means keeping a journal and being brutally honest about when you break your own rules. 7. Which is the last. I understand the absolute necessity of these principles and never violate them. This is the master rule. These principles are your trading constitution. This framework is your shield. It automates your decisions before you're in the heat of a trade, protecting you from your own worst impulses during the trade. Let's make this real. Imagine a trader has a strategy with a 60% win rate and a 2-to-1 risk-to-reward ratio. A trader stuck in the single trade mindset takes their first trade. It's a loser. Frustration kicks in. The second trade is also a loser. Now they're anxious. The third trade is another loss. Panic. This strategy is garbage, they think. They either abandon it or start revenge trading to make back the money, and they inevitably blow their account. They never got to see the edge because their focus was too narrow. Now, let's watch a professional use the exact same strategy. They know their edge is defined over a sample of 20 trades. They take the first loss. It's just data. They take the second and third losses. Still just data. They keep executing flawlessly, without a flicker of hesitation, because they trust the process. Over those 20 trades, they might end up with 12 winners and 8 losers. The 8 losses cost them $800. But the 12 winners, with a 2-to-1 reward, make them $2,400. Their net profit is $1,600. The edge showed up, but only because they had the discipline to execute through the random string of losses. The consistency wasn't in the outcome of each trade, but in the execution of every single one. This brings us to the core truth. Learning a new strategy is an intellectual task. You can do it in a few weeks. But achieving the mindset to trade it consistently is a deep psychological journey, a total rewiring of who you are. Mark Douglas broke this journey down into 3 stages. Stage 1. The mechanical stage. This is the hardest part, and it's the one everyone tries to skip. For a sample of at least 20 trades, your only job is to follow a rigid set of rules. No exceptions. No discretion. The goal here isn't to make a pile of money, the goal is to prove to your subconscious mind that you are capable of following rules without emotional interference. You're building the bedrock of self-trust. You are literally rewiring your brain to operate on process, not panic. Stage 2. The subjective stage. Only after you master the mechanical stage can you start to introduce your own judgment. Because you've built a foundation of discipline and an unbreakable belief in your ability to follow rules, you can now start to use your experience to read the market more dynamically. You know the rules so well that you now know when they can be bent, without breaking your entire framework. Stage 3. The intuitive stage. This is the zone. At this stage, you're disciplined. Probabilistic thinking is so automatic, it's effortless. You aren't consciously thinking about the rules anymore, you've internalized them. You're flowing with the market, executing with a calm, detached confidence that was born from hundreds of hours of disciplined practice. The reason consistency is so hard is that 99% of traders are trying to be intuitive artists without ever doing the brutal, repetitive, and unglamorous work of being a mechanical robot. They want stage 3 results without stage 1 discipline. It's impossible. A strategy is just information. Consistency is a transformation. So, the next time you sit down at your screen, stop asking, is this trade going to be a winner? That's the wrong question. It's the question that keeps you chained to a cycle of hope and fear. Instead, ask yourself this. Can I execute my plan flawlessly over my next 20 trades, regardless of the outcome of any single one? This is the shift that changes everything. It's the journey from being the gambler to becoming the casino. You have to accept that you can't control the market, but you have absolute control over yourself. True confidence in trading doesn't come from a winning streak, it comes from the unshakable knowledge that you will follow your rules, no matter what. That is your real edge. That is the truth Mark Douglas spent his life teaching. It's harder than any strategy, but it's the only path to lasting success. If this message hit home, and you're ready to stop chasing single wins and start building real, professional consistency, then subscribe for more deep dives into the psychology of trading. And drop a comment below, which of the 5 truths is the hardest one for you to accept? Let's talk about it.